Hello, I'm Bretton, one of our MCAT tutors here at Inspira Advantage, where we help students get into med school and other professional programs. Studying for the MCAT can get kind of meta sometimes. Today is one of those days. We're going to look at we're going to learn about everything that the MCAT expects you to know about stress, which itself can be very stressful. Specifically, we're going to look at what acute stress and chronic stress can do to a person, as well as the vocabulary the MCAT wants you to have to understand where stress comes from, as well as the vocabulary around describing stress in more medical terms. Let's get into it. Stress is the physiological and cognitive response to challenges or life changes. The first step of stress is called primary appraisal. During this step, a potential stressor is classified as irrelevant, benign, positive, or stressful. If during this step a threat is detected, a secondary appraisal begins. The secondary appraisal step assesses one's own ability to cope with the threat. If the individual thinks she can handle the threat, they will feel a lower amount of stress than somebody who doesn't think they can handle it. If the stressor is never resolved, general adaptation syndrome may develop. General adaptation syndrome, or GAS, has 3 steps: the alarm stage, the resistance stage, and the exhaustion stage. The alarm reaction stage refers to the initial symptoms the body experiences when under stress. This is referring to the fight or flight response, which is a physiological response to stress. The natural reaction prepares you to either flee or protect yourself in dangerous situations. Your heart rate increases, your adrenal gland releases cortisol, and you receive a boost of adrenaline, which increases energy. This fight or flight response occurs in the alarm reaction stage. After the initial shock of a stressful event and having a fight or flight response, the body begins to repair itself. It releases a lower amount of cortisol, and your heart rate and blood pressure begin to normalize. Although your body enters this recovery phase, it remains on high alert for a while. If you overcome the stress and the situation is no longer an issue, your body continues to repair itself until your hormone levels, heart rate, and blood pressure reach a pre-stress state. So what we can see is this alarm stage can reset back to baseline. However, if your body continues to secrete the stress hormone and your blood pressure remains elevated, you may think you're managing stress well, but your body's physical response tells a different story. This can lead to the resistance stage. Signs of the resistance stage are being irritable, having low concentration, as well as just a general frustration. If you continue to be stressed throughout the resistance stage, your body's now getting very tired, and you are going to enter the exhaustion stage. The exhaustion stage is a result of prolonged or chronic stress. Struggling with stress for too long periods can drain your physical, emotional, and mental resources. Struggling with stress for too long of a period can drain you physically and mentally to the point where your body no longer has the strength to operate well. This is when a person gives up. They feel like their situation is hopeless. Oftentimes, a person who is in the exhaustion stage of general adaptation syndrome feels fatigue, burnout, depression, anxiety, and a decreased stress tolerance. Additionally, they're also at a higher risk of infection. It's also important at this point to reinforce the knowledge that when we say stress, the body treats stress the exact same as if it's a mental thought or if it's a bear chasing you. Your body doesn't know how to tell the difference and will react the exact same way. This is why you want to address the root of your stress so you don't end up in the exhaustion stage. But at any point here, whether in resistance or exhaustion, you can eventually move back to baseline. The earlier you get there, the better. Now, let's briefly take a look at the physiological response of stress. Stress activates glucocorticoids, which will increase blood glucose by mobilizing fat stores and increasing glucose uptake. Cortisol is an example of one such glucocorticoid and is secreted in the adrenal glands. When talking about stress, it's also important to tie in the idea of the Yerkes-Dodson law of optimal arousal. This theory says that there's an optimal level of stress where your performance is enhanced. Let's take a look at what this looks like. So on our y-axis, we'll have performance, and on our x-axis, we'll have anxiety. The Yerkes-Dodson curve then looks something we call the point up here, point of optimal performance. A good example of this is the MCAT. You want to have a little bit of stress to ensure that you perform your best, but you don't want to be overly stressed to the point where you are performing worse. Make sure you're prepared for your MCAT by learning the content and test-taking strategies. Inspira Advantage is a great place to ensure you end up at the peak of the Yerkes-Dodson curve. Thank you so much for watching our video on stress, and I'll see you next time.